Welcome everyone to the inaugural edition of Africa Fortnight, where we'll be talking about the biggest talking points from around the African continent that have taken place over the past few weeks. And of course, this is exclusive on Africa in Perspective. My name is Cherokee Bet, and it's a pleasure to have you tuning into this, and let's get straight into it. So it's been an eventful couple of weeks, eventful month actually, entering 2019 for the African continent. It's a massive year for democracy in Africa, with about 24 countries going to the ballot, be it in presidential, be it provincial, council elections. A large chunk of Africa's population will be voting in some form. So it will be interesting to see some of the elections and how they pan out over the course of the year. But we want to start with focusing on the Democratic Republic of Congo, who have elected a new leader. The people of the Democratic Republic of Congo went to the ballot on 30th of December of last year, that's 2018, and Felix Tshisekedi, one of the opposition leaders, has been elected and emerged as the winner of this election, and was recently inaugurated to become the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo. So why are we focusing on the Congo, and why does this have such large implications? A reported $24 trillion of untapped resources exist as we speak in the DRC. So this election was definitely a huge one in that respect. DRC also boasts a rich culture and a rich music scene, with legends such as Papa Wemba, Franco, to name but a few. Despite the riches of the Democratic Republic of Congo on both an economic and cultural point of view, the country has been marred by economic strife and marred by civil conflict as well. The outgoing President Joseph Kabila became one of the youngest presidents in the history of the world and even Africa, when he became president at the age of 29 following the assassination of his father Kabila Sr. He's been in power for close to 18 years. He has ruled the DR Congo with an iron fist. It was only following a series of protests across the country in Congo 2 to 3 years ago that he decided to leave power and decided to hold a general election. As it would be expected, the former President Kabila has been dragging his feet about this general election until it was finally decided that 2018 was the year for it to be held. And there was a series of different challenges even during the electoral process that kind of curtailed the good conduct of the elections. Some observers think that there was some unfair play in the elections, and there were two opposition leaders that were the most prominent in this election. That was the winner, of course, Felix Tshisekedi, and the other opponent, who's Martin Fayulu. The winner of this general election, Felix Tshisekedi, is himself, like the outgoing President Joseph Kabila, the son of a former prominent politician in the Democratic Republic of Congo. A number of international observers, including the African Union, have kind of questioned and put into question the validity of these results, citing many irregularities during the electoral process. Some speculate that President Joseph Kabila facilitated some support for the Tshisekedi camp. Despite the many questions around the validity and the legitimacy of this election, there is no doubt about the implications, the massive implications that this vote and this election has for the region and for the continent at large. This is the first transition that has been peaceful in terms of electoral transfer of power from one regime to the other since 1960 for the Democratic Republic of Congo. And one should not also forget the resilience and the persistence of the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo, who really tried to get Kabila accountable and make sure that he would not go beyond his term limits. To help us better understand the situation in the DRC, we invited Anna Hope, who hails from the Democratic Republic of Congo.
What do I think the sentiment is on the ground? I think it's divided. Before the election, during the campaign, we all agreed on one thing as Congolese that we were voting for change. We were voting for the opposition. Whoever the opposition leader would be, whether it would be Tshisekedi or Fayulu, we were all decided, we all agreed. I think 80% of the Congolese agreed that it was not going to be Kabila. People were divided between the two main opposition leaders, Fayulu and Tshisekedi. So if you look at the opposition won by more than 70%, that I think no matter what the disagreement is, those numbers are demonstrative of the reality on the ground is that we wanted the opposition to win. I'm among the people who are satisfied. I wouldn't say happy, but I think, yeah, I'm satisfied with everything overall. 3 years ago, we didn't think Kabila would go. We actually thought that would face a bloodshed, that there would be, civil war. The fact that Kabila today managed to, you know, go in court is not because he's kind, it's not because he's a democratic person, it's just because of the pressure that he's been enduring on all fronts, on internally with the Congolese themselves, externally. I think it's definitely a turning point. Tshisekedi has he has very big challenges, and the people are waiting for him to, bring tangible change. So he's kind of on a hot plate. He's got a lot of work to do. I wish him all the best. I do. It's about time that the DRC wakes up, as the giant that it actually is.
So we move on now to Ivory Coast, the economic powerhouse of the Francophone sub-region in West Africa, the world's largest producer of cocoa, and of course they're also well known for the golden generation of football. Players like, of course, Didier Drogba, the Kalou brothers, the Toure brothers. So massive news coming out of there is the fact that Laurent Gbagbo, the former president of Cote d'Ivoire, has been acquitted of all charges by the International Criminal Court over the past week. And this was after the disputed general election in 2010 that led to around 5 months of some brutal clashes that gripped Ivory Coast. Clashes that took place in Ivory Coast claimed the lives of around 3,000 people, and 500,000 people were displaced as a result. So Gbagbo was forcefully evicted from his presidential palace during that time after he had refused to accept the result, and 5 months of fighting had ensued following that election. So some of the pictures are still very vivid in the minds of Ivorians of Gbagbo being unceremoniously evicted from his presidential palace along with his wife. So essentially, this puts into question again the validity and the legitimacy of the International Criminal Court, especially when it comes to treating or looking at cases around African heads of state. We are delighted to have Edith Kwasi, who will be joining us to talk about the situation in Ivory Coast.
L'acquittement de Laurent Gbagbo, ex-président de la République de Côte d'Ivoire, a été prononcé le 15 janvier dernier par les juges de la Chambre de première instance de la CPI. En Côte d'Ivoire, les réactions face à cette décision étaient partagées. D'un côté, les partisans de l'ex-président qui ont vécu cet événement comme une victoire ont jugé par les scènes de liesse populaire observées dans la capitale et à l'intérieur du pays. De l'autre, les victimes présumées de Laurent Gbagbo, qui ont également investi les rues pour cette fois-ci manifester leur désapprobation. Si cette décision de justice n'a pas permis de rapprocher les Ivoiriens, qui restent malheureusement traumatisés par les violences politiques de 2010, elle reste tout de même décisive pour l'avenir politique de la Côte d'Ivoire. À moins d'un an de la présidentielle de 2020, l'échiquier politique ivoirien est en pleine configuration. En effet, nous assistons à l'implosion du RHDP, la majorité au pouvoir qui aura certainement du mal à conserver son statut de favori à la prochaine échéance sans le PDCI-RDA de Henri Conan Bédier et l'UDS de Soro Guillaume. Ainsi, ces derniers viennent grossir les rangs de l'opposition et une éventuelle alliance avec le FPI de Laurent Gbagbo pour affronter en 2020 cette majorité au pouvoir n'est pas écartée. Un retour en Côte d'Ivoire de l'ex-président ivoirien n'est pas sans risque. Condamné par contumace à 20 ans de prison pour crimes économiques, ce dernier doit encore régler ses comptes avec la justice ivoirienne. Aussi, le FPI est toujours divisé en deux factions rivales, celle de Afin Guesson et celle de Assoadou. Beaucoup d'obstacles restent donc à surmonter avant un retour effectif de Laurent Gbagbo et du FPI sur la scène politique ivoirienne. Quoi qu'il en soit, l'enjeu le plus important demeure le maintien de la paix en Côte d'Ivoire et j'ose espérer que les Ivoiriens auront tiré des leçons des violences politiques de 2010 et sont en mesure cette fois-ci de prioriser les intérêts de la nation.
We now move on to Sudan, where there is a revolution of sorts that is currently brewing against the regime of President al-Bashir, who has been in power for over 3 decades. Now, this uprising and upheaval has been underreported. Journalists have been shut down mercilessly in Sudan at the moment. To different reports, the government cracked down on academics, public intellectuals, journalists, and just any other position around President al-Bashir has been cracked down. They've been incarcerated or jailed. These protests began back in 2018 on December 19th after a rise in the prices of different basic goods and amenities around Sudan. Now, the protests are entering the third month and they don't seem to be relenting. The president of Sudan, President al-Bashir, has been in the headlines in recent years because he's being pursued by the International Criminal Court for his purported crimes against humanity, especially with regard to the conflict in Darfur. So one element that has been somewhat out of the ordinary in these protests is the prominent feature that doctors have had in terms of mobilizing for these protests against the current regime. Some disturbing images have been flowing in from Sudan, for example, where we see a number of hospitals and other medical clinics that have been attacked by the government in order to sound out or quiet the doctors who have played a large role in the protests. Nonetheless, one has to recognize the bravery shown by the Sudanese people who have gone to the streets in opposition to this regime, and we hope for the best for the Sudanese people. And our thoughts and prayers go out to all the people who have been affected by this. So let's move away a bit from politics now and look at football. The Africa Cup of Nations, the showpiece tournament for national teams across the continent, has been moved from January 2019 to June 2019. This happened after Cameroon was deemed unfit by the Confederation of African Football to hold the showpiece during the course of this year. So the tournament has been moved to Egypt and it will be held in June. This is music to the ears of many European coaches who have their season still ongoing, and teams like Liverpool that have superstars like Mohamed Salah, Sadio Mane from Senegal, Naby Keita from Guinea will be so happy to be able to keep their players during this period who would have otherwise been gone for the Africa Cup of Nations. It could be very well Liverpool's year this year, but we'll see how that goes. Egypt will no doubt be the favourite to win the Afcon with their prolific history in the tournament with 7 titles to their name. So I think it's a great news for Egypt. So Egypt will be hosting the 2019 Afcon. 2021 it will go back to Cameroon, and 2023 Ivory Coast will be hosting the showpiece. Ivory Coast had to cede its place for 2021, and of course Many investors and entrepreneurs in Ivory Coast were angered by this, but they had to make amends for this. It's been an extremely tough week for the people of the Republic of Zimbabwe following the internet shutdown by the government on all social media and also a crackdown on protests around Zimbabwe. This was further exacerbated by the news of the legend, the musical legend Oliver Mutukudzi, who passed away a few weeks ago. Just over a year ago, Zimbabweans across the country were celebrating the deposition of the long-time dictator and autocratic leader Robert Mugabe, who had been in power for close to 30 years. Now, the shutdown seems reminiscent of this previous regime, of the oppression, the economic instability that crippled this regime. But Oliver Mutukudzi, or as he is affectionately known, Tuku, was a man, a musician who provided a soothing sound, provided a sound of respite even during these hard economic times, during these times of economic and social uproar in Zimbabwe. And that's why Oliver Mutukudzi will always have a special place in the hearts of Zimbabwean people and also African people. He was known all over Africa and all over the world for his music, his wonderful sound, and also his very politically and socially conscious music that tried to make the society better through his music. So we want to remember him. Coincidentally, he died exactly 1 year after his longtime friend and fellow musical legend Huma Sikela from South Africa died. So we just want to remember him and want to respect his legacy. And we have a friend of ours from Zimbabwe called Ashimujini who also joined us in kind of giving homage to Oliver Mutukudzi and also trying to describe the situation at the moment in the country in Zimbabwe.
What has been going on in Zimbabwe is so worrying. It's so sad that my beloved country has been wrecked with such violence. And I always ask myself, do we really deserve that? Each citizen has the right to protest, and it is very inappropriate for the government to respond in that way. What Mnangagwa and his government did shows that they see demonstrators and its citizens as enemies of the state. How the military and the police handled the demonstrations was so irritating, using live ammunition against unarmed civilians, shutting down the internet, and some of the people in various government structures keep justifying how the government handled these demonstrations. Several civilians were killed and wounded, a number of women were raped, just to protect a very few looting individuals in the government. It's so sad. It was very unfortunate that at the peak of such disturbing incidences, one of the best Zimbabwean musicians passed away. Mutukudzi was and remains a star in music industry. To me, the attempts to bury Mutukudzi at the National Heroes Acre of Zimbabwe were like reducing him to the ZANU hero. Tuku's legacy was not whatsoever connected to ZANU politics. In fact, he remained apolitical throughout his career, and I applaud the Mutukudzi's family decision. We hope for the best in Zimbabwe. We hope that the regional and international communities are going to facilitate the recovery of this lovely country.
So now we move on to a segment I call Best of the Week, where we look at some of the best or inspiring stories from across the African continent over the past couple of weeks. Unfortunately, on January 15th, we had an attack in Kenya where 21 people lost their lives following a terrorist attack that was perpetrated by Al-Shabaab at the Dusit Hotel in Nairobi, close to the Central Business District. Despite this horrific experience or this horrific tragedy, there was still a silver lining. One thing that I was encouraged by was the solidarity and the willingness of the people to help, or Kenyans to come together and help some of the people that were caught in the crossfire. So now we have a poll for you guys. We want to have some of your views on some of the different issues we talked about today. But the issue I want to ask you today, or the question we're going to ask you today for this week is, do you think the Africa Cup of Nations should stay in January or should be moved to mid-year in June or July? Do you think the Africa Cup of Nations should be held in January or moved to June or July permanently during the middle of the year? So what should you watch out for in the month of February? So we have the African Union Summit of the Heads of State that will be coming up this week, the week of February 11th. So stay tuned for that. I'm sure there'll be a lot of things that will come out of that session. And also 2 massive elections in Nigeria, of course, the nation in Africa with the largest population, and Senegal as well. Thank you so much for tuning into the first edition of Africa Fortnight. See you in a couple of weeks. Stay tuned on Africa in Perspective. I'm Trevor Kibet. Thank you so much.